let's talk about a new e-bike. And there aren't many folding e-bikes out there that I would have the confidence in to take small hops. And yes, there is a little bit of air there, off, well, anything. But this one, at least in a moderate and around town mindset, is quite capable. Because features. This is a bike from Rattan called the Fat Bear Plus. They sent this bike for review, but note that I haven't accepted payment, nor do I allow anyone to dictate or pre-approve my reviews. They're seeing this for the first time, just like you are. If you watch my channel, you know I have a soft spot for 20-inch folding fat tire e-bikes, and I guess that's a good thing because the market's flooded with them right now. But this bike, it's a little different than the norm because it has all the features that people usually comment and say they want to see in some of the other bikes I've reviewed. And like all the folders in its class, the Fat Bear Plus has the beanstalk folding handlebar setup, this one with a Neko headset. And on top of the beanstalk is a lot of what I personally wished for, and wished would have been on my favorite folding fat tire bike. Like decent grips. These are leather comfort grips, and normally I worry a bit about leather that I'm going to mess it up, and I don't know if it's because these are plain black or what, but I just enjoy them. No worries. And look at this, an actual good shifter. No Mickey Mouse shifter here. This one uses a Shimano Acera 8-speed trigger shifter. Now that does mean no twist throttle. And yes, this does have a throttle, but the trade-off for having a good trigger shifter means the throttle's on the left side and it's a thumb throttle. And as many have requested on previous bikes, even me, hydraulic brakes. These are branded Logan, but they're really a copy of some very common hydraulics. They also use 180mm rotors, which is a first for any folding e-bike I've ridden. This bike's computer has a very nice color screen. It's easy to see in daylight, and I'm not going to go through all the settings, maybe in a follow-up video, but in my opinion, this is better than the M5 computer. Not that there's anything wrong with the M5, except for the fact that all mine reset the odometer regularly. Another perk of this computer, it has a USB port that can actually be used to charge a phone. It's worth mentioning that the left side throttle means a bit of reach to access some of the controls, but the mode selection, that's in a sweet spot and all that's really needed for riding. And as I see it, there are 3 big ticket items on this bike, one being the suspension fork. It has a preload adjustment, a manual lockout, and 60mm of travel. And the fat tires provide a decent amount of cushion, but add a suspension fork to that and it's very noticeable. These tires, they're 20 by 4.0 Chaoyang knobbies, good for on-road or off. Let's talk about this alloy frame. It has a matte green finish with black and blue graphics. It has a very familiar look, like most folders with an internal battery, at least on the front half. Though at the rear, it gets a little unique, with a rear shock that has 30mm of travel and a pivot system that honestly looks better than some of the pivots on some mountain bikes I've ridden. Power comes via a rear hub motor, this one 48 volts and 500 watts, or watts if you look at the sticker closely. This motor is branded Reebok, or I guess you could say Reebok. Now I don't know this brand, and the website, Rattan's website, makes some lofty claims, even some about regenerative charging, and we'll see, but the labeling does not impress me. The rest of the drivetrain, however, that does. No freewheel here, an actual cassette, a Shimano 8-speed. This isn't the usual tourney derailleur either, here it's a Shimano Altus. Pedals, those are alloy Welgo folders. Now let's look at the chain ring. I believe this is a 52 tooth, they told me, and I can't remember and I haven't counted it, but the crank arms, they're alloy, and like the hub motor's Waltz, this one has some odd branding. This looks like it says loose to me. Now it could be L005E, but I think it says loose. And like all folders, this has that long seat post that can accommodate a wide range of riders. In this saddle, it's decently comfortable, enough for a full battery's worth of riding. To match the small chubby wheels, there's a stubby little kickstand, along with a bottom bracket located prop stand for when the bike's folded. The cadence sensor is a sealed unit, and I'm guessing this is a standard 12 magnet model. There's a headlight too, and it's among the best I've seen on folding bikes. It's a projector with an alloy housing. So as you can see, a lot of what many of us have asked for. And even though the suspension travel at 60 and 30mm doesn't sound all that impressive, they're more capable than you may expect and give a usably smooth ride. And that's without being springy or bouncy. But let me temper your expectations just a bit, because think of this as more a curb hopper than a trail shredder. This bike came out of the box nearly perfect. This is the factory derailleur settings, very close, all it took was a quarter turn, then the bike's shifting smooth as butter. Power wise, this is not the most powerful 500 watt motor I've ridden, but it's not really a slouch either. I'll talk more about performance in a second, but I want to mention cadence and gearing because that's where they got this 100% right. There is zero chance of running out of pedal. Shifting is also required to get this bike up to top speed, and it's still easy to pedal, but there is sufficient resistance. You do have to pedal, there's no free spin. And top speed, this is rated at 28 miles per hour. I cap out at 24 to 25 miles per hour, and there is resistance to possibly get the bike up the extra 3 miles per hour, but I would need to stand to pedal to do that, and that's too awkward on these tall folding handlebar setups. Throttle only mode for me yields 21 to 22 miles per hour. Now I've already mentioned this 500 watt motor not being the most powerful I've ridden, but still sufficient. On large hills though, it does take going into the lowest gear, and my other 500 watt e-bike I can pedal up this same hill with about the same ease, but only be in third gear. Now I'm assuming some of this is resistance from what they call IPAS or iPass, which is their recharging system, which they say can make a mile's worth of battery life out of a mile's worth of regeneration. It would take some long hills or lots of hard pedaling. But I found that it kicks in at 14 miles per hour, which is doable on lots of the local terrain. And here you can barely make out the red regeneration rate showing up on the computer along with how much power it's building. But I found a trick. I became a lazy master of using throttle only to get up to 20 to 22 miles per hour, and then click off the assist to get into regeneration mode, and let it coast down to 14 miles per hour. I can actually feel the resistance as the regeneration's giving little bumps of power. For something that I thought was going to be gimmicky, it actually works. Now, I use throttle only mode so much, and when I'm not in throttle only, I'm at the highest pedal assist, that I know how far I can get on an e-bike. But on this Rattan, this Fat Bear Plus, I'm getting about an extra 10 miles. Even with the way I ride, I'm getting around 30 miles per charge, which has impressed me. So I'm liking this bike for what it is. Now it's not perfect, but let me run down my observations and thoughts thus far. Looks. Folding e-bike lovers like me should be happy, because this dual suspension adds a little bit of flair. And this is my favorite computer thus far. Intuitive, easy to read, and the usable USB port is a bonus. And no more tendon damage with these leather and very comfortable grips. And with a decent trigger shifter and hydraulic brakes, these are all items off my personal wish list. Well, let me back up to those brakes for just a second, because there's one thing. Specs say 180mm rotors, like the one here on the rear. But the front rotor on this review bike, it's only 160mm. They said this was a rare factory oversight and that they make lots of other bikes. But you would think you would send a reviewer your best effort. No one's perfect, everyone makes mistakes, but I guess it's good that they didn't cherry pick. But it's still an odd oversight. The fork. Now, these aren't going to win over anyone for hardcore riding, but they work well when factoring in how far someone would push a bike with a folding handlebar setup. The rear shock, big thumbs up. This is a noticeable difference. And this can also be ran without a key dangling from the underside. And I'm more than pleased with the Altus cassette mix and with not running out of pedal with this setup. Now, the hub motor. First, I'm not impressed with the branding being a cheap peeling sticker, and double so for the 500 Walt typo. I guess at least that helps detract from the loose labeling on the crank arms. And as folders go, I'd like to see a handle on the frame. Very helpful when opening and closing the bike. And here's the battery, 48 volt, 11.6 milliamp hours, 557 watt hours. And the specs say that it uses Samsung cells. So as I see it, a lot of good with only two unforgivables, the first being the 160mm rotor, and the second was a rattle that I discovered was the battery rattling inside the battery compartment. Functionally, not an issue, but the annoyance level is near max. I'm going to run down the specs and see what's accurate or inaccurate there. These are directly off the Rattan website. Battery, 48 volt, 11.6 amp hours, check. 48 volt, 500 watt motor, well 500-ish watts, but I'm going to call this a big win because of the regeneration ability from the IPAS, so check. Charger and charging time, both look correct. Mileage, I can get 30 with my throttle heavy max pedal assist ride, so I don't doubt that 40 or more is totally possible, especially with the bike's regeneration ability enabled. The computer display, as I've already mentioned, I like this a lot. Even though this is listed as freewheel, we know this is a cassette and a good Shimano one. Transmission, that's their term for the shifter, Shimano Acera, so check. And this fork definitely does the job, all good there. I like the frame too, the only addition I would suggest would be the integrated carry handle I mentioned earlier. And that rear shock, 30mm of travel is good enough for this bike. Brake lever, I'm assuming this is only referring to the reservoirs. These are knockoffs, but they do work, though I'm a bit apprehensive because of the price of the bike, which we'll get to in a moment. But for now, because they work, I'm going to give them a check. Brakes, 180mm rotors, which would be great, but I can't give this a pass because of the 160mm mix-up for the front brake, so an X. A red one, so you know I'm serious. Tires, the little fat 20x4.0s. Who else but Chow Yang? Okay. Product weight, 50 pounds. I don't think so. Try 59.8 pounds. So an X for underreporting, though I'm pretty sure this is probably the weight without the battery. Weight payload capacity, 330 pounds, right in line with the other bikes in this category. And rider heights, based on the length of that seat post and the stem, 5 foot 3 inches to 6 foot 4 inches, sounds about right. So overall, 14 out of 16 get good check marks. If this were a test, that would be a strong B. And if the brakes had both been 180mm, most certainly an A, except for one factor, and that's pricing. I see on their site $15.99, though they do have a coupon code for $100 off, so that's $1,500. I'm going to let you decide if that is right, so comment below with what you think about this Rattan Fat Bear Plus e-bike, and I'm curious to see what everyone has to say. Do you think it's a good value? Give this video a thumbs up if you found it informative, and if you haven't already, I hope you subscribe and you have that notification bell active. Thanks to everyone for watching, and have a great day.